Hi people, it's me, Anja, my pronouns are she, her, and welcome back to my channel. Donate to Palestine, and happy Pride Month. I'm so excited to film today's video, because today's video is part 5 of my favorite Sapphic books with Sapphic main characters. Clearly, I love reading about Sapphic books, and I have so many to recommend to you. So here we go. The first one on this list is called Into the Crooked Place. This book is a YA fantasy following 4 magical outsiders who must come together to save each other, their world, and their home before it's too late. This book is so good. I love the 4 characters in this book because they're all so distinct and such wonderful, well-developed characters, and I love their dynamic with each other. There's a wonderful sapphic relationship within 2 of the characters, and I love it. This book is so good, and it's honestly so underrated. Like, this book deserves more hype than the author's other book. If this author sounds familiar, she also wrote To Kill a Kingdom some time ago, but I definitely think that this book is so much better. The world building, the action-packed, fast-paced plot, the characters, the romances, this book is so good. It's so good, and the sequel is also really good. So with that, I highly recommend this book because it's absolutely so good. The next book on this list is called The Deepest Breath. This book is middle-grade contemporary, and it follows a young girl who's starting to realize that she has feelings for other girls. This book is so good, and it's so wholesome, and it's so fluffy, and honestly I should have included it in my favorite fluffy queer books, but I guess that this means that I'm just making a part 2, so we love to see it. Anyway, this book is so good. It's so lighthearted and wholesome, and it's really fluffy and just so awesome, and it's just so good. We love to see it. The plot was so intriguing, and it was so thrilling. The main character is such a wonderful, well-developed, distinct, emotionally touching character, and this story is so good. And honestly, it's kind of underrated because it's absolutely so good. It's so lovely and it's so wonderful. The Sapphic representation is so good. It's so spot on. Obviously, I can only speak on it to an extent since I'm not Sapphic myself, but at any rate, this book is so good. It's so lovely and it's so wonderful. I love the characterization, the setting, the plot. Like, it's so good. Need I say more? I highly recommend this book. The next book on this list is called One True Way. This book is a middle-grade historical fiction story following 2 girls who discover that their friendship might be something more, and it's set in the 1970s. This book is so good. I said recently that I'm trying to read more queer historical fiction books, and this book was one of those that I wanted to pick up, and it's absolutely worth all of its hype and so much more. This book is absolutely so good. It is so lovely and it's so wonderful. Even though the writing is kind of more simplistic, I really enjoyed the story because the story is where it's at. The story was so good. The perspectives and the characters were so wonderful, and they were just so distinct and so well done. The romance was so well developed, and I really enjoyed it, and the choice of having the story set in the 1970s was so well done. I don't think I've read a whole lot of stories, period, that are set in the 1970s, so reading a queer story set in the 1970s was so good. Like, this book is so good, and it was so awesome, and it's really underrated. So with that, I would highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Follow Your Arrow. This book is YA contemporary, and it follows a young bisexual girl who's a bit internet famous, and she has this big online platform. And after her girlfriend breaks up with her, she starts to fall for a guy who does not have an online life, and therefore does not know that she is internet famous, and she really wants to keep that from him. So yeah, it talks about being online, and it also talks about internalized biphobia and bisexuality, and this book is so good. I personally really enjoyed it. I thought it was so well done. I thought it was so awesome, and it was so good, and it was so wholesome and wonderful and lovely and well done, and quite honestly, this book deserves just as much hype as books such as Perfect on Paper and Cool for the Summer. You know what I mean? This book is so good. I loved the conversations about internalized biphobia and bisexuality because it made the story so much more timely and important and necessary. This book is so good, and the romance was so cute, and it was so wholesome, and the main character was such a wonderful, well-developed, distinct character, and I loved her growth, and the plot was so intriguing as well. Like, this book has it all. It was absolutely so good, and with that, I highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called King of Skulls. This book is YA fantasy, and it follows 3 characters, Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina. Nikolai and Zoya are originally from the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and Nina is originally from the Six of Crows duology. But I wanted to focus on this duology in particular because I feel like Nina's relationship in this duology deserves just as much screen time as her previous relationship from Six of Crows. You know what I mean? This book is so good. You don't necessarily have to read the other books to understand what's happening in this book, even though all of these characters were first introduced in previous books. I don't think that you have to read the other books to understand this book. However, I do think that this book spoils the other books, so I would recommend it, but it's not necessarily necessary. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically, this book is so good. Leigh Bardugo is one of my favorite authors because I love the way that she crafts her characters and her world building and the plot. Like, this book is so good. And the sequel, which just came out about 3 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, was also really good as well. And I love how Nina's bisexuality is portrayed in this duology because, like I said, her relationship in this book deserves just as much hype as her relationship in the Six of Crows duology. So with that, I highly recommend this duology because it is so good. The next book on this list is called Pulp. This book is a YA historical fiction contemporary because it has 2 alternating timelines. It follows 2 Sapphic girls, one in 1955 and one in 2017, who are connected by a lesbian pulp novel. This book is so good. I really enjoyed the plot. I really enjoyed the 2 distinct, well-developed characters. I really enjoyed the setting of both settings. I really enjoyed this book. It's absolutely so good. This author is so talented. I know I talked about this book rather recently, about 2 weeks ago, if this video goes up when it's scheduled, but at any rate, this book is so good and it deserves so much more hype because it's absolutely so good. I personally really enjoyed it because I really enjoyed how the author connected both timelines and both perspectives because they blended so well. This book is so good. And I also just remembered that I believe this book has Jewish representation in it, so I probably should have included it in my favorite books with Jewish main characters video. But again, this just means that I will be doing a part 2. Anyway, this book is so good and I highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Down Comes the Night. This book is YA fantasy and it follows a bisexual main character who's been sent to cure somebody who has a mysterious illness. This book is so good. First of all, the world building is so wonderful and it's so inventive and it's so immersive and it was so good. The plot is so wonderful because it was so intriguing and so thrilling and it was action-packed and fast-paced and I just really enjoyed it because it really just kept me on my toes and it kept me intrigued throughout the entire story. The main character is such a wonderful, well-developed, distinct character and her romances were so well done and they were so well developed and distinct and I loved them. I fell in love with the 2 characters in the endgame romance before they fell in love with each other, which honestly is the mark of a good romance if you're shipping them before they get together. You know what I mean? This book was so good. It's absolutely so good and it deserves all of its hype and so much more. So with that, I highly recommend it. The last book on this list, but certainly not the least, is called Pepper's Rules for Secret Sleuthing. This book is middle-aged contemporary and it follows a young Sapphic girl, Pepper, who's investigating some family secrets. This book is so good. It's so wholesome and fluffy, and it was so lovely, and it was so wonderful. The plot was so intriguing, and it was so thrilling, because I truly had no idea what would happen next. Pepper is such a wonderful, well-developed, distinct character, and I really enjoyed her as a person. I wanted to reach through the pages and give her a hug, because I was so emotionally attached to her. You know what I mean? The friendships in these stories were so well-developed, and I loved it. This book is so good, and it's so underrated, and for what? The plot is so intriguing, the characters are so wonderful and well-developed and distinct, and I really enjoyed the dynamics between all three of them. You know what I mean? The story is only set in Pepper's perspective, but anyway, this story is so good because it's so wholesome, and it's so fluffy, and it's so lovely, and it's so wonderful, and it's so good. So with that, I highly recommend it. So, in conclusion, happy Pride Month. Please don't forget to donate to Palestine, because they are suffering through a genocide right now, and it's really important that you care. So yeah, since this video is a part 5 of my favorite Sapphic books with Sapphic main characters, I will leave it in the description below. First of all, where to donate to Palestine, and second of all, videos 1 through 4. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please don't hesitate to give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below the honey emoji if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!